Hey there. Hope you had a great weekend. I'm Adam Kaufman. He's Julian Edlow, and I know what you're thinking. Why am I watching the two of you on a Monday? Well, that's right. It's that time of year where NBA Pre-Lock Live, Jules, and this guy in the middle here, Geoff Ulrich. Well, don't worry, we won't exclude him. 3 times a week now, NBA Pre-Lock Live. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're excited. Hopefully you are too. So get your questions in so we can help you set your lineups. Use the hashtag DKTV on Twitter, DKLIVE. And another available, even preferable option for you, Facebook Live comment section, nice and easy as well. Now, as you can see, there's no Shrug here. We're not hiding him under something or anything like that. He's probably watching, angry he's not around to provide those blistering hot takes. Instead, as mentioned, we do have Geoff right between us here. Geoff, how are you, buddy?
Good. I got plenty of mild, lukewarm takes to give, so.
Well, at least he's consistent. All right, let's start with the slate. 10 games, none begin before 7:30 Eastern, and that is why we are here with you at 6:30 instead of the usual 6, and apologies for being a couple minutes late. As you can see, we're trying some different things out for you. Now, there's lots of offense for the taking out there tonight. There's the Suns and Pelicans, nearly 240 expected points. We'll show you the slate so you can take a look for yourself. Warriors and Knicks, almost 230 projected points. Lakers, Hawks, north of 220. Most games in the 2 teens, which is very impressive. Again, a lot of offense. Celtics and lowly Grizzlies, in fact, are the low game at 204. So in terms of just how you feel about the overall slate, Julian, I mean, where are you going?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good games to focus in on this slate. As you mentioned, there's points everywhere, so that's generally a good thing. There's 10 games, there's injuries, there's stars and good matchups, there's values. So this slate really brings everything in terms of, you know, roster construction. I think there's going to be some really high-scoring lineups tonight and a lot of good places to target just because of matchups and injuries that give players better roles.
As we look at that slate, what do you think, Geoff?
Yeah, it's a 10-game slate, but it's very condensed. There's a couple games you really want to keep your eye on, and we'll talk about them later tonight. There's also a couple games you just don't have to pay much attention to. So it's 10 games, but you can really condense it, and I agree with Julian. I think you're going to see some big scores.
So again, get those questions in with the hashtag DKLive or Facebook Live right in the comments section. We are here for you. I mean, we like talking hoops just like anybody else, but really, we want to help you set those lineups. So as far as lineup notes that we are aware of right now, and of course information is going to continue to trickle in, always does. Guys who are in tonight, Marc Gasol's coming off a rest game, but he's going to play in Boston. Justin Holiday starting for Zach LaVine. Aaron Baines back in the starting lineup after missing almost 2 full games, but the last one anyhow. Karis LeVert is going to be in. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Jordan Bell as well. Guys who are out, mentioned LaVine already, Jimmy Butler, and that has opened up all sorts of opportunities in Minnesota. More on those guys, especially value plays coming up in a bit. Tyreke Evans is not going to play, leading scorer there for the Grizzlies. Noteworthy for a club that's lost 9 in a row. Eric Gordon, Ersan Ilyasova, bought out today by the Hawks, expected to sign with the Sixers, and that's a guy that gives you double-digit points, just not tonight. Tyson Chandler, Malcolm Delaney, and Jahlil Okafor as well. Some other lineup notes, guys who are questionable that we're keeping an eye on, Clint Capella and Ryan Anderson. So where would you like to begin?
We go narratives or talking about the in-out guys? Sorry.
No, in terms of the in-out guys.
In terms of the in-out guys, I like that there's only a couple of questionable guys. We have 2 of them on a 10-game slate, so we really know what we're going to get here on this slate, it feels like.
Barring surprises, obviously.
Obviously, anything can happen, but barring any surprises, might get some extra value on the Rockets if a couple of big guys like Capella and Ryan Anderson are out. But I think just the overall clarity on this slate to have 2 big questionable names only with 10 games means that we can be really confident building lineups tonight.
Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, a couple big names we got ruled out already. Tyson Chandler, that means Alex Len is really in play again. But also Zach LaVine. There's some real good value on the Chicago Bulls tonight. We'll talk about that later. But that's definitely a really good situation that we know that going into tip-off. It's just good that LaVine is out in general because I think the value is better on Chicago as a result.
All right, so enough teasing. Let's actually give you something here. First segment is narratives, the areas that our guys here are really focused on when it comes to setting the lineups ahead of these 7:30 locks. Again, you've got about 45 minutes to work with, so listen, heed their advice. Each guy is going to give us a couple of narratives. We'll get some reaction from each of them as well and find out, again, these are the things that you need to know. If you've been locked at work doing something that isn't fun all day and you haven't had a chance to research your NBA information, these are the key notes tonight when it comes, again, to setting your lineup. So, Julian, give us one.
Yeah, so my first narrative tonight, we talked about how we know the guys that are mostly in on this slate. you got to pay up for the studs tonight, and there's so much value to fill around them. So I'm going to give you some numbers here to throw at you. 70, 83, 99. Those are the amount of DraftKings points Russell Westbrook has had in his last 3 games against the Orlando Magic. That's who he's playing tonight. Some more numbers for you. 52, 90, 77, 60, 87. Those are Anthony Davis' last 5 games in terms of just straight-up DraftKings points. Those are some great names. Karl Anthony Towns going up against the Sacramento Kings. Not a difficult matchup there with Jimmy Butler and all his usage sidelined. James Harden. We've already got Eric Gordon ruled out. Clint Capella and Ryan Anderson may be ruled out, so he could get a ton of usage tonight for the Rockets. Those are just big names in really good spots on this slate, and nobody in that 6 to 8K range really pops out to me, whereas we're going to see in our value section later, we've got 5 guys that we're focusing on. There's probably 5 more guys we could even add to that list and make it 10. So you can really get 2 studs here and then focus in on the values and really fill in your lineup. So I think it's a 2-stud night for sure.
So obviously here, we'll get to our anchor segment in a little bit, but listening to some of those numbers and the guys, you're talking about an MVP finalist, a guy who's playing at an MVP level, a potential future MVP. This is the caliber of talent that we're talking about. And Geoff, it seems like, and again, listening to Julian, virtually any of these guys, I know you guys have your favorites, and we'll get those in a little bit. You don't need to give them to us now, but it seems like any of the stars, the studs, they're in good spots tonight. You're almost sort of safe either way, barring injury.
I mean, I wouldn't quite go that far. I think Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis are pretty clear, and there is kind of a chance of the blowout with one of them. Like you said, we'll talk about the studs in a bit, but I do think there are a couple clear studs you're going to want to anchor around, especially in cash games. That's just my opinion.
All right, so give us a narrative.
Okay, so I mean, my first narrative tonight, it's Drazen Petrovic night in Brooklyn. So, if you don't know who that is, please Google it. But it's a big narrative night for the Nets. They got some players back. But this is a fast-paced game with a really high point total. Both these teams have implied point totals way above their season averages. And with the Bulls obviously having a lot of value in the DFS slate, Zach LaVine is out. There's just a lot of open plays, especially on the Bulls side. On the Brooklyn side, there's a couple guys you can target there too. It's not quite as good a situation because they are getting some players back, but definitely take a look at this game. It's got a high point total, 2 fast-paced teams who are basically tanking, well, especially the Bulls. So definitely it's sort of a DFS goodness there that you want to look at.
Yeah, it seems like tanking has been almost alarming at this point this year to the point. I mean, you got Mark Cuban openly telling his team to tank and then getting fined.
There's more teams tanking than not tanking right now, it feels like.
Which, I mean, I guess is maybe good if you're a contender and really bad if you're hunting for ping pong balls, but it's not a good situation. But nevertheless, on Petrovic, are you buying in?
Well, I don't care at all that it's Drazen Petrovic tonight, but I do care that there's value here on the Chicago Bulls with some guys out of the mix, some guys being thrusted into different roles.
Narrative Street the same way you and I do, Geoff.
Sherrod's not here. We don't care about Narrative Street anymore. Geoff can fill in for Sherrod with the narratives, but is there value in this game? Yes, absolutely.
Okay, next narrative.
Second narrative, you got to capitalize on the Jimmy Butler injury on this slate. We already saw that he was out Saturday night against the Chicago Bulls, actually, his former team. But Jimmy Butler, he's a guy that's averaging 37 minutes and 41 DraftKings points so far this season. So that just opens up a ton of value on the wing. I already talked about Karl Anthony Towns, a guy you can capitalize on at $9,900. But look at those guys that are going to plug in right where Butler plays on the perimeter. Nemanja Bjelica, $4,700 in salary. Jamal Crawford, $3,800 in salary. These are some guys that we can focus on in the value section, but guys that are 100% going to be thrusted into bigger roles against the Sacramento Kings, a good team to target against. So those 2 names right there, Bjelica and Jamal Crawford, I think are the biggest beneficiaries of the Jimmy Butler injury and guys that you really need to consider on this slate.
Geoff, I know we'll do value in a little bit, and guys like that are going to be a part of that list. But in general, is this a game you feel like you have to have exposure to just because of how well these guys could play in place of Butler and have been?
It's a bit of a guessing game. So, I mean, Jeff Teague looks like he's going to be in a real good spot. His usage goes up. I know Jumanji Bjelica is a guy who's...
No.
He's not a movie, fella. The Rock isn't floating around here.
I know he's a player who looks like good value, and I do think his minutes are going to go up. He's not exactly what you'd call a super efficient fantasy player, but at 4,700, he's definitely in play. I don't think it's necessarily a game you want to stack tonight, but it's definitely got potential. Andrew Wiggins, too, at 6,600, I think is a really good GPP target.
Okay, back to you then. Last narrative.
Yeah, I mean, my last narrative is there's a game on this slate that we really want to target, and it's the New Orleans Pelicans versus the Phoenix Suns. It's got a massive team implied total. It's just
it was like 240 points, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be a fast-paced game against two teams that aren't that good at defense, especially the Phoenix Suns. If this game does stay close, it's only a 7.5 point spread right now, then, I mean, you're going to see a ton of points. And really, it's just kind of a fantasy thing, too. All the players, there's so many players on both sides that are in play tonight. Rondo, Drew Holiday, Anthony Davis, obviously, we're going to talk about. Miratek, there's everyone, and there's a ton of players on the Suns, too. So it's just a game that you have to target tonight. It's really kind of a rare event, because I've never really seen a game where literally 5 players on both sides are legitimately in play. So definitely you got to target it tonight.
As we've said, a lot of offense in that game, Julian. I imagine you feel the same way, that when you're chasing points tonight, yes, there are a lot of options, there's a lot of value, but sometimes you don't want to outsmart yourself.
Yeah, you can't overthink it. There's no way that you can avoid this game. You see the projected point total, and that's going to bring people right to it. The one thing that I'll go against Geoff a little bit on here, other than Alex Len at 5,600, who's starting with Tyson Chandler out, there's not that much I'm interested in on the Phoenix side. I'm looking more at the New Orleans side here. The Pelicans are averaging 130 points over their last 3 games. You're going up against Phoenix. I think the majority of the fantasy goodness from this game is going to come from that side. Anthony Davis, somebody I'm going to focus on a little bit later, but Drew Holiday, he's a guy that's been averaging, I think, 48 or 49 DraftKings points over that 4-game stretch, where New Orleans has been averaging 130 straight-up points per game. So a lot of targets on this New Orleans side, I think, to be interested in. The Phoenix Suns, they're tanking. They're terrible at defense. You got to look at the Pelicans.
For the sake of devil's advocate, though, when you have, and this can go to either one of you guys or both, but when you have that many projected points for a game and you feel like, you said it just now, Julian, that people are naturally going to go after that game, and you don't want to outsmart yourself, you don't want to, psych yourself out, basically, but knowing full well that other people are going to be chasing that game as well, does strategy come in where you say, okay, a lot of people are going to be taking points there, I'm going to go somewhere else, or do you have to kind of, I don't know, keep up with the Joneses, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's a lot of value on this slate, a lot of good plays in other positions. So, look, stacking this game is going to be a popular thing to do. So, whether you want to maybe avoid the stack, I don't know if you can fade this game realistically altogether, but maybe you want to pick your favorite play from this game, use them, and then look other places and kind of make that your contrarian strategy in a GPP. But I don't know if you can fade 240 projected points altogether.
Geoff?
No, you definitely don't need to fade this game. And there's so many players in play here that you can just go off the popular options. I mean, you can go Dragon Bender. Alfred Payton has I know Julian doesn't like the Phoenix side as much, and I get it. There's a chance for a blow, but Alfred Payton against Rajon Rondo, that's a great matchup for Payton. So, I mean, you can pick and choose some of these lower-owned options if you want to get a little bit contrarian. Don't have to avoid the game, though, at all.
All right, get your questions in with the hashtag DKLIVE on Twitter or Facebook Live. You can just dump them right into the comment section. We will see them as we have started to already. We got a few questions for you, so let's take the first one and see what we have in mind here. All right, it comes from Susan. Markkanen or Bazemore tonight? What do you think there, Jules?
Yeah, it's a pretty good question. A couple guys we haven't talked about yet, and although Bazemore is in a good spot, I think, against the Lakers, we've got Lauri Markkanen. There's no Zach LaVine. I like the outlook here for Lauri Markkanen going up against a Brooklyn Nets defense that ranks towards the bottom of the league, defending power forwards and centers, whatever you want to consider Markkanen. I know he's a power forward, eligible player on DK. So Markkanen there for me.
Geoff?
Yeah, it's a really good matchup for Markkanen. I would agree, too. Bazemore, he's so inconsistent with his point production, too. So I would definitely lean Markkanen there. It's a better matchup.
If you want to be more contrarian in a GPP, though, Bazemore is definitely going to have lower ownership there and does have a good matchup against the Lakers, so something worth considering.
Next question. See what we have from Peter. Booker or Holiday in GPP? Geoff?
I kind of feel like Devin Booker is going to be more popular tonight because I feel like everyone is just going to target him to get a piece of Phoenix. I would say Drew Holiday, actually. Julian already gave us the numbers, but he's been so hot recently. I would say him in a GPP.
Yeah, I already said that I'm Pelicans over Suns in terms of most of the players on this slate, the one Sun being Alex Len. So give me Holiday there. He's been red hot lately, leading probably the hottest offense in the NBA.
So hot right now.
We're just doing some Zoolander talking before the show.
You got to get it in. All right, from Adam, and it's not me. Do you think Karl Anthony Towns is a lock against the Kings or Drummond against the Raptors?
Well, because of Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook, I don't think either of those guys are necessarily a lock on this slate. I think Karl Anthony Towns will be more popular just because he's going up against Sacramento and the Jimmy Butler injury there. But Andre Drummond, he's one of the anchors that we have on the show tonight, so he's a guy, again, if you want to be contrarian, kind of like that Bazemore Markkanen question, Drummond's a guy not to overlook, but Karl Anthony Towns definitely in the better spot, I would say, on this slate.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything Julian just said. I don't really feel like either one of those guys are locks or like must plays. And really, if I was picking one of them for GPPs, I'd go Drummond. He's actually had some big game against the Raptors. Karl Anthony Towns can get into foul trouble. There's still, Teague and Wiggins to pick up some usage. So I would actually lean Drummond slightly.
All right, keep getting your questions in. I think that's all for now. We want to move on, just refresh you a little bit, remind you of who's in, who's out, and some of the lineup question marks. Now, Marc Gasol, Justin Holiday, he's starting for Zach LaVine tonight, Aaron Baines, Karis LeVert, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Jordan Bell. They are all in. Guys who are out, Jimmy Butler, of course, but talking all about him, Zach LaVine, Tyreek Evans, Eric Gordon, Ersan Ilyasova, now that he's been bought out by Atlanta, Tyson Chandler, Malcolm Delaney, Jahlil Okafor, all not playing, and a couple of guys that are still questionable, at least as far as things stand right now, Clint Capella and Ryan Anderson. All right, let's talk some anchors and value picks, though. Find out the top plays that you need exposure to for this slate. Now, first up, anchors. I'll tell you about these guys, and then we'll get opinions from these two right here. But Russell Westbrook, he's expensive, 11,800. Highest on the slate. Thunder against the Magic. Westbrook coming off of one of his worst offensive nights of the year in Golden State. 44 fantasy points after at least 52 his previous 7 games, but he did put up 70 points in Orlando earlier this year. Julian rattled off some of those numbers before. Anthony Davis, just $100 cheaper. Pelicans will face the Suns. Davis notched double-double in OT, a win last night, so he's dealing with a back-to-back. He was in Milwaukee. Still only 52 DK points, though, following back-to-back games with ridiculous totals of 90 and 77. It's nuts. Struggled in Phoenix around Thanksgiving, though, 39 fantasy points. James Harden, pay down just a hair, 11,100. Minimum 50 DK points in 7 of his last 8 for a league-leading Rockets team that has overtaken Golden State, at least for now, as the top team in the league. They're in Utah tonight, 83 points against the Jazz in November, twice in the 40s since in this matchup. Karl Anthony Towns, Cat, shade under 10 grand. T-Wolves in Sacktown, 3 straight games in the low 40s for Towns, so he's been a little quiet. Double-double machine, though, and 56 points opposite Sacramento a couple weeks ago. And also Andre Drummond, 9,200, Pistons in Toronto. He's going for double-doubles and 2 straight defeats here, and consistently a 15-15 guy. We'll see what he can do tonight, obviously, but he's been living around 40 fantasy points the last 4 games, approached 60 in a meeting with the Raptors earlier this year. So, boys, make your argument, and again, persuade me here. That's the whole point, because that's what you're doing for the viewer. You're persuading the viewer that your guy, whomever it is from that list, is the one that you have to start your lineup with tonight. Julian.
Yeah, so if I must pick one of these guys, and I really don't want to pick one, it's Anthony Davis for me. We've mentioned this game against Phoenix, the 240 projected points. You mentioned what Anthony Davis has done recently. I have the numbers here somewhere, but he's basically scored 90 DraftKings points in 2 of his last 5 games, and the other 3 games haven't been too shabby. 60, 52, 77 DraftKings points. So he's been absolutely on fire. The Pelicans have been averaging 130 points over their last 3 games. They play one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. There's pretty much everything working in favor of Anthony Davis on this slate. And finally, no Tyson Chandler, so Alex Len will be the guy to go against him defensively. Maybe Len gets in some foul trouble. And then there's basically no bigs after that. So no Tyson Chandler, a lot of points in this game. Every reason to love Anthony Davis, who has been absolutely on fire lately.
Geoff, can you be more compelling?
I'm going to take a more roundabout view here. Look, I think there's 2 very clear top options on the slate, and it's Anthony Davis and it's Russell Westbrook. And look, I'm not going to talk anyone out of like switching Anthony Davis out of their cash game lineup or a 50-50 lineup or whatever you want to call it, because I think he's fine. He will be higher owned, though, and I do think that with the New Orleans Pelicans against the Suns, they could just overwhelm them, and the points could come from Jrue Holiday or Rondo, and Anthony Davis might have a bit of a slower night than we're used to in recent weeks, and that would open up the door for Russell Westbrook going up against the Orlando Magic. And I'm just saying that if you have one big GPP lineup and there's like 50,000 people in, I would start with Russell Westbrook quite frankly, because we've seen what guys like James Harden can do against Orlando Magic. They are awful against guarding against point guards or the guard position in general. Russell Westbrook and the Thunder coming off a loss to the Golden State Warriors. So you're getting angry, Russell Westbrook, too. And we know this guy actually does play up to his narrative. So I think this is a great spot to deploy him in GPPs, and I would play him over Anthony Davis in that format.
All right, I agree with both the call and the argument from Geoff here, and I also look forward to the opportunity whenever Julian happens to be right and he's voted against. He speaks up on Twitter, and you can find him on there because you got to let the people know. You got to stand up for your. But before we move on to the value, let me ask you both this question because I obviously recited a couple of high guys on that list where you're paying effectively, well, more than $11,000 for each of those top three, and then you could pay down just a little bit. Is there a scenario where you punt on both those guys that you're talking about in an effort to get multiple top studs, top tier guys from that list in your lineup? Because you're not going to put both Davis and Westbrook in there, I wouldn't think, right?
Adam, actually what I was about to say,
well, please.
Not only would I not punt on both of these guys, but if I'm doing something, I'm playing both of them together in the same lineup.
Value.
And they're absolutely between the Bulls, the Suns, the rest of the Pelicans, some of the Nets. There are value plays on this slate. The Hawks, after buying out Ersan Ilyasova. We're going to get to the value guys, and you know those are the guys that you would want to fill in with. But you can absolutely put both of these guys in your lineup tonight.
You would go stars and scrubs like that, Geoff?
I think it's a little bit thin. I think you could probably do it, but you'd have to get a lot of things breaking your way. I think the better approach is to pick one over the other personally, but it is doable. Julian's right. Like there's enough value out there.
All right, continue to get those questions in. Again, hashtag DKLIVE and Facebook Live in the comments section. We will be with you for another, I don't know, a little bit, 10 minutes or so. So let's talk value, guys, here. Some names that you've heard already quite a bit during this show. Alex Len, 5,600. He has blown up for at least 33 points in 3 straight games, producing double digits, or rather double doubles, like they're going out of style. Suns are in New Orleans, of course. We've been talking about that matchup. He's got to deal with Anthony Davis, or at least attempt to. David Nwaba, 4,900, 65 DK points total his last 2 games. Not nearly as sharp last game in Minnesota 2 days ago, but he's in Brooklyn tonight. TREY, 4,600, back-to-back 26-point games. That's real points, 40-plus for fantasy, and get ready for the Warriors this evening. Jamal Crawford, 3,800, averaging north of 20 fantasy points his last 3. He's taken advantage of Jimmy Butler's absence in Sacramento tonight. Mike Muscala, 3,600, little boomer bust, but usually with a floor of around 12 or so fantasy points, and he's facing the Lakers. So, Geoff, you could start this one first. Sway me.
I'm going to go with Nwaba. I mean, I kind of changed my pick after I saw Zach LaVine was ruled out. I made the producers throw him up on the board. He's averaged 30 minutes over the last 2 games, and there's really no reason for him to stop here. I mean, with LaVine out, he's going to keep getting these minutes. And it's just one of those matchups that I think you need to take advantage of, and I think you need to get a piece of some of this Bulls value. The Brooklyn Nets play at a high up-tempo pace. This game, like I already said, has a higher implied team total for both teams. It's actually a pretty close point spread, too. So I like Nwaba as a good value pick from this game. I think he's going to probably see at least 30 minutes again. Doesn't seem to be any reason why he wouldn't, because the Bulls just don't really want to play their really good players that much because they're tanking. So put Nwaba out there. He's only 4,900. He's been pretty good over the last 2 games, and I think he'll probably be good again in this really good matchup.
Julian?
Yeah, I mean, the Bulls' values are great. The only thing is, even with LaVine out, there's a few of them you can use outside of Nwaba. You've got a guy like Denzel Valentine who's going to get some more usage. And then the starting point guard is actually going to be Justin Holiday, who was out of the rotation altogether. And then with LaVine out, they're going to throw him into the starting lineup. So I do like the Bulls' value. I just think there's multiple ones of them. And the guy that stood out to me as soon as I looked at the value was Trey Burke, just because since the All-Star break, he has been averaging 28 minutes per game in those 2 games and averaging more than 42 DraftKings points in those instances. Not necessarily easy matchups for him either. And even though tonight is against the Golden State Warriors, that's going to be a paced-up matchup, so Burke should have plenty of opportunities. And even if it's a blowout, you know, the Knicks don't have much point guard depth, a lot of younger players there. Burke should stay on the floor the way he's been playing. They should keep looking to use him. So I just think Trey Burke, a very safe call in a really great position. But like I said, this is a night to pay up for 2 studs, so a lot of the guys on that list, and even more guys that aren't on that list, should definitely be on the radar. All really good plays.
I'm going to side with Felix on this one. I like the call. I think, you know, when we talk about it all the time, obviously, when it comes to fantasy and what is the surest thing above all else, it's opportunity, it's minutes. If he's going to be out there with consistent minutes, Burke, and obviously he's been shooting lights out right now, hopefully he can keep it up, and I just think it's a good spot for him, and there is that variety that exists on the Bulls side, something to consider, and, you know, you don't want to maybe get a little crazy with it potentially, just having to pick and choose. It gets dicey in those situations. We talk about that. Let's do your questions here, and we'll feed you with some more lineup info as we go along. Again, we're a little light on time, but let's get these in here, and if you have any remaining questions, you can join the party, DK Live on Twitter or Facebook Live comment section. Drummond and Griffin tonight for Detroit from Kevin. What do you think, Geoff?
No, it's not really a good enough match. I do like Drummond, though. Like I said, if you're picking between those two, I'd take Drummond. But it's just not a good enough matchup to stack both of them, in my opinion anyways. Toronto's a good defensive team. They've been winning a lot lately, too. So I don't see enough fantasy points there.
Yeah, that's going to run you $17,000 in salary to stack those two guys. With the type of value and star play we have on this slate, I think you're going to be, you know, digging yourself out of a hole if you start with those two guys.
Okay. Next question. Let's keep moving right along here and see what we've got from you guys. For Westbrook or AD from Billy?
Both. Do it.
Rewind 10 minutes and watch us argue. I mean, I already laid out the argument. I do like Russell Westbrook if you're making like one big GPP or multiple big GPP lineups. But Anthony Davis in cash games is completely fine.
Good news.
Probably better.
Good news is we are going to wrap in a few, so it'll give you time to go back, rewatch segments of this show. Probably not quite the whole thing, but give you plenty of time to help make some decisions before lineups do lock in, well, basically a half hour. All right, next question here. We got a few more to go, at least. Anyway, this one from Alexander. How much do you like D'Angelo Russell tonight?
Yeah, sneaky play right there. I actually do like D'Angelo Russell. We haven't talked about him yet, but he's going up against the Chicago Bulls, who will not have Zach LaVine. Russell's been, you know, he came back from injury and was not really doing so well only because he wasn't playing so many minutes, and in his last 4 or 5 games, he's been getting around 30 minutes per game. So the matchup is there, the minutes are there. Sneaky play, D'Angelo Russell. I like him for GPPs tonight.
I agree. I mean, if I was playing a GPP lineup and I wanted to target someone from Brooklyn, it would probably be Russell. I don't mind Allen Crabbe either, but Russell is, I think, the better upside play.
The only cause for concern, I guess, with Russell tonight, Karis LeVert and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson both coming back. So I don't think he loses many minutes to those guys, but maybe a little bit of usage there.
Okay, something to consider. Next, this one from Max. Moutier or Burke in DKGPP. Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, Emmanuel Mudiay or Mudiay, whatever his name
Moutier.
is. He should be
Say
lower
it with me. Moutier.
Moutier. He should be lower owned than Trey Burke. I mean, Trey Burke's got the recent form. Obviously, everyone's kind of he's a great value play, and Julian's right. It's a good and really targeting point guards against Golden State can actually be pretty profitable. So it is a good situation for both. Moutier is going to be lesser owned. I'll throw that out there.
The Knicks tried very hard coming out of the All-Star break to give the starting point guard job to Emmanuel Mudiay, and Trey Burke, you know, won that lead role going away. Trey Burke is a much safer play, and I don't even see in GPP. I don't see how Moutier can be a safer play than Trey Burke tonight. It would be a very controversial to go to the Moutier side tonight, but people felt that way 2 games ago when Emmanuel Mudiay was supposed to be the guy and Trey Burke went off. So you can try it if you're feeling it.
I not only host, I lead our NBA Hooked on Phonics classes. You can sign up anytime. Another question here. Again, Facebook Live comment section, the place to get in there, or Twitter. Muscala or Payne for GPP from Sean?
Muscala, definitely. We talked earlier about Ersan Ilyasova being bought out. He's likely on his way to the Philadelphia 76ers, so that Hawks front court becomes even more thin, going up against a Lakers team that ranks last or near last against the power forward center positions. So Mike Muscala, 3,600, great price, great matchup, an expanded role. He's got everything going for him on this slate. One of those values that can help you get the studs together in a lineup tonight.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind it either. Dwayne Dedmon is starting again tonight. It looks like he's getting another chance. knows what he's going to do. But there is a scenario where he kind of, picks up some minutes and maybe bumps Muscalo's down a bit. But it's still a really good play at only 3,600 because the matchup's so good. So,
in terms of opportunity in fantasy, before we get to our last question, how do you guys feel about Ilyasova going to the Sixers? Like, what's that going to do for him? A guy that's averaged, basically 11-6 this year anyway, that neighborhood, now going to a team where he's going there because there's going to be opportunity for him. But what's that going to do for him and for some other guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to hurt his fantasy value. You've got Embiid there. You've got Dario Saric. You've added guys like Trevor Booker, Rashawn Holmes. I'm probably even forgetting a name. So he's just going to be, one of a bunch of role guys off the bench. His role is definitely going to decrease. So his fantasy value will decrease.
You need multiple injuries, I think, to become
yes. Amir Johnson, that's the name I was forgetting.
Sure.
Well, there we go. A lot of bodies there.
Case in point, a guy you would never play in fantasy. Last question. Make it a good one. Felicio tonight with him getting the start from Mark.
Another one of those value plays that we haven't talked about, 3,600. He went off for, I think, 22 or so DraftKings points in his last game, playing 31 minutes. Great matchup against the Brooklyn Nets in that Bulls-Nets game. Another guy I like for value tonight, one of many.
You're a little bit scared that he might not play that much because the Nets don't typically deploy like a traditional center. So that's the only concern, the only drawback. Probably better for marketing, but he is way cheaper, so it doesn't cost as much.
Okay, lineup notes for you once again in case you're joining us late. Marc Gasol, Justin Holiday, Aaron Baines, Karis LeVert, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, and Jordan Bell are in. Jimmy Butler, Zach LaVine, Tyreek Evans, Eric Gordon, Ersan Ilyasova, Tyson Chandler, Malcolm Delaney, and Jahlil Okafor out. And guys who remain questionable as of this moment, Clint Capella and Ryan Anderson. So, afraid we can't give you final updates on them, but that's just the way the world works right now. Final thoughts from you guys. Geoff, go ahead.
Yeah, make sure you get a piece of that New Orleans-Phoenix game. It should be interesting.
Even if you disagree with me on Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook being the two guys that you have to stack, just make sure you get some stars in your lineup and round it out with value. You don't have to play those 6,000 to 8,000 guys on this slate. They're not really there. Get the values, get the studs, put them together.
Okay,
play all the good players.
Yes, play the good players. Well said, Geoff.
Yeah, just win. Just win. It's really that easy, right?
Simple.
As we told you, NBA Pre-Lock Live 3 times a week now. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll be back to our normal 6 p.m. Eastern start time on Wednesday. But there is Pre-Lock tomorrow. It's just not NBA. NHL Pre-Lock tomorrow night on Facebook Live. You don't want to miss that. A few of the guys are going to be joining you. Experts talking to you about the NHL slate. It's a big one. I think 9 games, maybe 10 games. So a lot of contests to talk about and a lot of movement fresh off today's NHL trade deadline as well. So you do not want to miss that. Alex Jankowski and crew will have you covered. In the meantime, for these two, I'm Kaufman. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday, and hopefully Chirag is back with us. But really, we got to put a bell on that guy. It's who knows where he is.